Pedro, thanks very much for joining us. Looking at the residential market, how do you see demand at the moment? I mean, do you see this changing in terms of location, urban versus suburban, or even different product types?
I think it's early days to judge on that. Some people will work more from home than before. That seems to be quite evident. How much, if it's going to be 10% or 20% or 30% or 50% of the workforce, I don't know. I really don't know, but my guess would be 20 to 30%. And so commuting will not weigh so much on their decision to buy a house. They will perhaps be more, there'll be a higher propensity for them to buy houses further away from their job place than before, because maybe they can get a bigger house further away, or a house with more garden or whatever. And I think that people are living more in their houses. And obviously that means that, the way they wish the house would be probably is going to change a little bit. So it's very difficult to adjust projects. Because it takes so long to approve a project that the cost of doing that probably does not compensate the advantage. But in the long term, I would expect people going more to the outskirts than before.
And do you see an opportunity for conversion of office into residential in your markets?
If offices, particularly old buildings of offices, if they're going to be more empty, if a company needs less space, let's say 20 or 30% less space, it needs to negotiate its lease. And sometimes that's going to work as a catalyst to, why don't we change building? And then there's good opportunities out there, or much nicer buildings. Then old office buildings are going to suffer. They're going to get empty. And I believe that could be an opportunity, because some of those office buildings which are old are also in old parts of town. So they are very good for residential. And that could mean that there will be a quick supply from that side, or quicker than we anticipated. And maybe the prices will, not go up as much because of that. You can think about so many scenarios that, I try to focus on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is good location, good design, good quality of construction, good sales channel, and good after sales service. And if you do that better than everybody else, at least you should do all right, And of course, it's very difficult to do it better than everybody else. I mean, please don't take my words as if we think we can manage that. But if we can focus on that and we can be up there with the best, then whatever the market does, we'll survive.
And in terms of the capital, Pedro, are you beginning to see more interest from institutional investors into the sector?
You don't usually sell residential to investors, as you know. There's not a lot of people institutional investors buying residential to rent. Some of them are trying, but unfortunately, for the numbers to work for them, they can't really pay the price of the final buyer. So they're not very competitive to us, at least. We prefer to sell. It's a higher risk, but we prefer to sell to the end occupier. So we're not dealing as much as with investors as before. But from what I hear, there is a lot more investment activity or interest than I expected it to be. And I think that's partly because generally sentiment is aligned. Okay, we are going to go for 2 or 3 years, not so good phase, last year, this year, next year. But after that, it's going to recover. And anyway, projects take about 5 years to mature. So let's get in on the game now. Otherwise, we won't be able to play when the market is up. So, investors are very astute, and I think they're seeing through that. And therefore, there seems to be a lot more of them around than I expected, at least.
Thanks very much for sharing your views on the market, Pedro.
Oh, it's my pleasure.